Before we dive into the story, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more heart-touching tales. Wishing you a beautiful day now. Sit back and enjoy the champagne glass shattered against the marble floor of the Metropolitan Museum's Great Hall. Crystal fragments catching the light like fallen stars. Emma Blake stood frozen among Manhattan's elite, her hands still trembling from the force of her throw. Across the crowded gala, Carter Wellington's emerald eyes locked onto hers through the sea of designer gowns and tuxedos she had just destroyed. Everything. 3 hours earlier, Emma had been nobody. A struggling photographer from Queens who'd won a charity auction ticket to the most exclusive event in New York. Now, with 500 of the city's most powerful people staring at her, she was the woman who had publicly humiliated the Wellington heir. The silence stretched like a held breath. Then Carter began walking toward her, his footsteps echoing against the soaring ceilings where ancient Egyptian artifacts looked down like silent judges. The crowd parted before him, whispers rippling in his wake. "Interesting way to get my attention," he said when he reached her, his voice low enough that only she could hear. Blood trickled from a small cut on his cheek where a shard had grazed him. Emma's chest heaved with rage and something else she couldn't name. "You deserved worse, did I?" His lips curved into something that might have been a smile if it hadn't been so dangerous. "For something I supposedly did 5 years ago? Something you clearly remember differently than I do?" The words hit her like ice water. He didn't remember. Of course he didn't remember. Why would Carter Wellington remember the night that had shattered her world when it had probably been nothing more than Tuesday entertainment for him? "Get away from me." Her voice cracked despite her efforts to sound strong. "I don't think so." He stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne mixed with the metallic scent of blood. "We need to talk. We needed to talk 5 years ago before you let your friends destroy my sister's life for fun." Something flickered across his face. Recognition, guilt. It was gone too quickly for her to be sure. Museum security was moving toward them now, drawn by the commotion and the growing circle of smartphones, capturing every moment. Emma could already see tomorrow's headlines writing themselves across. The social media feeds being broadcast live to millions of followers. "Not here," Carter said, grabbing her wrist. "Come with me." "I'm not going anywhere with you. You will if you don't want to spend the night in jail for assault." His grip tightened just enough to make his point. "I know the police commissioner. Personally. How well connected is your defense attorney?" The threat landed exactly as he'd intended. Emma had no money for lawyers, no powerful friends to make phone calls. She was exactly what she'd always been, a girl from Queens. Didn't belong in this world. But as Carter led her through a side exit that bypassed security, past priceless art and through corridors most visitors never saw, Emma caught something. In his reflection in the darkened windows they passed, he looked haunted. They emerged into Central Park where October's chill bit through her thin evening dress. The sounds of the city felt muffled here, replaced by the whisper of autumn leaves and distant traffic. "Start talking," Carter said, releasing her arm and stepping back. "Tell me about your sister." Emma wrapped her arms around herself suddenly. Aware that she was alone in the dark with a man who had once held the power to destroy everything she loved, who might still hold that power? "Her name was Sarah," she said, the words cutting like glass in her throat. "Sarah Blake. Remember her?" Now Carter's face went white in the lamplight. Now he remembered. Carter's penthouse apartment occupied the entire 53rd floor of a building he owned, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a god's view of Manhattan. But as Emma stood in his living room, she felt like she was in a tomb. Everything was cold, expensive, perfect. There was no life here. "Sarah was the waitress," he said quietly, pouring himself 3 fingers of whiskey with hands that shook almost imperceptibly. "The one from the club." Emma's jaw tightened. "The one your friends decided to play with. It wasn't supposed to go that far." The words came out strangled. It was just supposed to be a stupid bet. "Marcus said he could get her to sleep with. Him in one night. Told him he was disgusting, but you didn't stop him." Emma's voice was steel-wrapped in silk. "You sat there and watched while he drugged her drink. While he and your other trust fund friends took turns with her in the back room, while someone filmed it." Carter flinched like she'd struck him. I left before that happened. Oh, how noble. Venom dripped from every word. Beginning of my sister's rape? I didn't know what they were going to do, but his defense sounded hollow even to his own ears. You knew enough. Emma moved to the windows, staring out at the city lights that had once seemed magical and now looked cold as ice. The video went viral within hours. Sarah's face, her name, everything. Couldn't go to class, couldn't work, couldn't leave her apartment without people recognizing her. The girl from the Wellington Air sex tape. Carter set down his glass. With a sharp click, I didn't make that video. But your name made sure it stayed online forever. No matter how many lawyers she hired, no matter how many platforms she begged to take it down, there was always another copy. Always another comment section calling her a whore. Emma's reflection in the window was ghostly, fragile. She lasted 8 months. The silence that followed was so complete, Emma could hear her own heartbeat. She killed herself, Carter said. It wasn't a question. Sleeping pills. She left a note saying she couldn't live with everyone in the world having seen her at her most vulnerable moment. Couldn't live with the shame of what your friends did to her. Emma turned from the window, and Carter was shocked to see that her eyes were dry. I found her. Something inside Carter's chest cracked. He'd carried the guilt of that night for 5 years, but he'd told himself that everyone had moved on, that it had been forgotten. He'd never let himself think about the girl with the gentle smile who'd been serving drinks that night. Emma. Her name was barely a whisper. Don't. She held up a hand. Don't you dare try to comfort me. You want to know why I came tonight? Why I've spent 5 years tracking you, learning your schedule, your habits, your weaknesses? Carter's blood went cold. What are you talking about? Emma smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression he'd ever seen. I didn't win that auction ticket, Carter. I bought it with money I've been saving for 5 years. Money I earned working 3 jobs while I planned exactly how I was going to destroy your life the way you destroyed hers.
Ow.
She moved to his coffee table and picked up a manila envelope that hadn't been there when they'd arrived. Carter's heart hammered against his ribs. How did that get there? I have friends too. Not rich ones, but useful ones. Hackers, investigators, people who know how to get into buildings and plant things where they need to be found. Emma opened the envelope and spread photographs across the expensive marble surface. Your father's been embezzling from the company. Pension fund for 15 years? These are the bank records that prove it. Carter stared at the documents, his world tilting sideways. That's impossible, is it? Where do you think the money for all those family vacations came from? The houses, the cars, the lifestyle that goes beyond even your legitimate wealth? Emma's voice was calm, conversational, as if she were discussing the weather. Your father's been stealing from the retirement accounts of every employee in your company. 12,000 people who trusted the Wellington name with their futures. You're lying, am I? She pulled out her phone and showed him a video file. This is security footage from your father's office last week. Watch him access the accounts. Watch him transfer the money. Watch him destroy the paperwork. Carter's hand shook as he took the phone. The footage was clear, undeniable. His father, the man he'd admired his entire life, methodically stealing millions of dollars from people who worked for minimum wage in Wellington hotels and restaurants. Why are you showing me this? Emma's smile widened. Because tomorrow morning, unless you do exactly what I say, these documents and this video are going to every major news outlet in New York. Your family won't just lose their company. Your father will go to prison. And you'll lose everything you've ever cared about. Carter looked up at her, seeing clearly for the first time the predator that had been stalking him. What do you want? I want you to feel what Sarah felt. I want you to know what it's like to have your life destroyed in a single moment by someone who has all the power while you have none. She collected the photographs with methodical precision. And I want you to marry me. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? 1 year? A real marriage, not some fake arrangement for appearances. I want access to your world, your connections, your resources. I want to be Emma Wellington. Her eyes glittered with malice and something else he couldn't identify. And after I've taken everything that matters to you, After I've made sure that Wellington name is synonymous with scandal and humiliation, then I'll destroy you completely." Carter stared at her. This woman who had seemed so fragile in broken moments before, now revealed as something far more dangerous. "And if I refuse, then your father goes to prison tomorrow, your company collapses, and 12,000 families lose their retirement savings because of choices the men in your family made." She moved toward the door. "You have until midnight to decide. My number's in your phone now?" She paused at the threshold, looking back at him with eyes that held no mercy. "Sweet dreams, Carter. I hope you dream about Sarah." The door closed behind her with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. The wedding took place 3 weeks later in a small chapel in Queens that smelled of old wood and desperate prayers. Emma wore her mother's vintage dress, altered to fit her smaller frame. Carter wore the same black suit he'd been married in before, to a woman who died in a car accident 2 years into their marriage. A woman Emma knew nothing about because she'd been too focused on revenge to research all his secrets. There were no guests, no flowers, no celebration. Just two people bound together by blackmail and the ghost of a girl who would never see another sunrise. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the priest said, his voice echoing in the empty chapel. "You may kiss the bride." Carter looked at Emma, this stranger who was now legally his wife, and saw something flicker across her face. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and he glimpsed the frightened girl beneath the predator. And then it was gone. They kissed perfunctorily, a business transaction sealed with a touch of lips that felt like ice. Afterward, in the back of the car driving to Carter's penthouse, Emma stared out the window at the city that had taken her sister and wondered what she'd become. The weight of the wedding ring on her finger felt like a shackle. Having second thoughts, Carter asked quietly. "About destroying you?" "Never." But her voice lacked the conviction it had held 3 weeks ago. They settled into an existence that was less marriage than Cold War. Emma moved into the penthouse but took the guest room. They appeared together at public events, playing the part of newlyweds while privately circling each other like wounded animals. Emma had expected Carter to fight her, to try to find a way out of their arrangement. Instead, he seemed to accept his fate with a resignation that unnerved her. He gave her access to his accounts, his social circle, his business dealings. He answered her questions about his father's embezzlement with painful honesty. It was during one of these interrogations, 6 weeks into their marriage, that Emma discovered the first crack in her carefully constructed narrative. "You said you left the club early that night," she said, reviewing bank records in Carter's home office. "But Marcus Thompson's credit card shows charges until 3 a.m. Carter looked up from his laptop. "I said I left before the worst of it happened. I didn't say I left early." "What time did you leave?" His jaw tightened. 2:30. Emma's blood went cold. According to the police report she'd memorized, Sarah hadn't left the club until 2:45 a.m., which meant, "You were there when she left." Carter's silence was answer enough. "What happened?" Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. She was crying. The words came out strangled, stumbling.
Ow.
Her dress was torn, and there was blood on her legs.
"I knew
What my friends had done to her." Emma felt like she was drowning. "And I followed her, made sure she got home safely. She was so drunk, so hurt, she could barely stand." Carter's hands were shaking now. "I carried her up to her apartment, made sure she locked the door behind her." The room spun around Emma. This wasn't part of the story she'd constructed. Carter wasn't supposed to be the one who'd helped Sarah get home safely. He was supposed to be the monster. Why didn't you call the police? "With what evidence?" "My word against 3 other guys. From prominent families? You think the NYPD was going to take the side of a cocktail waitress from Queens against the sons of judges and senators?" Carter stood, pacing to the window. "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I was 22 and stupid and scared, and I convinced myself that she wouldn't want the attention, wouldn't want to relive it in court." Emma stared at him, her worldview tilting. "So you did nothing?" "I did nothing." The admission seemed to physically pain him. "She died because I was too much of a coward to do the right thing." For the first time since Sarah's death, Emma felt something other than rage. It was small and unwelcome, but it was there, understanding. That night, unable to sleep, Emma found herself in Carter's study again. This time she wasn't looking for evidence of his crimes. She was looking for evidence of who he really was. What she found changed everything. Hidden in the bottom drawer of his desk was a folder labeled SB Memorial Fund. Inside were bank statements showing monthly donations to suicide prevention organizations, all made in Sarah's name. The amounts were staggering, totaling hundreds of thousands of dollars over 5 years. There were also newspaper clippings. Articles about Marcus Thompson's arrest for insider trading 2 years ago, about another friend from that group dying, in a skiing accident, about Carter's own charitable work with assault survivors. At the bottom of the folder was a photograph. Sarah, laughing at something off camera, her face bright with life. On the back, in Carter's handwriting, "I'm sorry I failed you." Emma sank into the chair, the photograph trembling in her hands. This wasn't the behavior of a man who didn't care. This was the behavior of a man eaten alive by guilt. She heard footsteps and quickly tried to return the folder to the drawer, but Carter appeared in the doorway before she could close it. "Find what you were looking for?" he asked quietly. "I wasn't looking for anything." The lie tasted bitter, Emma. The night she said her name like a prayer. The night she died. This is the one who found her first. The photograph slipped from Emma's fingers. "You were already at the hospital when I arrived," Carter continued, moving into the room slowly, like she was a wild animal that might flee. "But I'd been calling to check on her for months. When she didn't answer that morning, I knew something was wrong. I used my connections to get her landlord to open the door." Emma felt like she was falling. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because you needed someone to blame, and I deserve to be blamed." He knelt in front of her chair, close enough that she could see the guilt etched into every line of his face. "I let you hate me because I hate myself. But Emma, you need to know that I never stopped trying to make amends, not for 5 years. She looked down at him, this man she'd married to destroy, and saw something she hadn't expected to find. She saw someone as broken as she was. "The embezzlement evidence," she whispered. "It's real, isn't it? Every dollar of it? And you're going to let me expose it? Let your father go to prison? Let your family lose everything?" Carter nodded. "Those people deserve their money back. My father deserves to face justice. I deserve to lose everything for being too weak to stop what happened to your sister." Emma stared at him, her carefully constructed revenge crumbling around her. She'd spent 5 years planning to destroy a monster, only to discover she'd married a man who was destroying himself. "What if I don't want your destruction anymore?" she asked, the words surprising her as much as they surprised him. "Then what do you want?" Emma looked at the photograph of her sister, then at the man kneeling before her, and realized she no longer knew the answer to that question. Outside, thunder rolled across Manhattan, and the first drops of rain began to fall. Emma never published the embezzlement evidence. For 3 months, she carried the weight of that decision like a stone in her chest. The documents remained hidden in Carter's safe, while they fell into something that wasn't quite love, but wasn't quite revenge either. It was messier than both, more dangerous than either. They began to share meals, conversations, late nights, when the walls between them thinned. And she caught glimpses of the man he might have been if tragedy hadn't carved them both into different shapes. Carter showed her the city from perspectives only money could buy. Private museum tours after closing. Dinners on restaurant rooftops with Manhattan spread below them like a circuit board. Broadway shows from boxes where they were the only audience members who mattered. Emma showed him how to live without armor, how to grocery shop and do laundry, and exist in the world without staff insulating him from every mundane human experience. She taught him that vulnerability wasn't weakness, that guilt could be transformed into purpose. She was falling in love with him. The realization hit her on a Tuesday morning in February, watching him make coffee in the kitchen while snow fell outside the penthouse windows. He was humming something under his breath, his hair messy from sleep, and when he looked up and smiled at her, Emma felt her heart stop. She was in love with the man she'd married to destroy. And that was when Marcus Thompson walked back into their lives. Emma was leaving Carter's office building after having lunch with him. and she collided with a figure stepping out of the elevator. The man who had orchestrated Sarah's assault looked older, thinner, with the hollow eyes of someone who'd lost everything and found only bitterness in the wreckage. "Emma Blake," he said, recognition dawning across his face. Or should I say, Emma Wellington now. Emma's blood turned to ice. "Marcus, quite the fairy tale romance you've got there. Poor girl from Queens marries the billionaire. Very touching." His smile was poison. "Of course I remember you from somewhere else, don't I? You're the sister. It's the one who couldn't save her little whore of a sister." Emma's hand moved before. Her brain could stop it, but Marcus caught her wrist before she could strike him. "Careful, princess. We're in public." He leaned closer, his breath reeking of alcohol. "I've been watching you too. Playing house, pretending to be in love. It's a very convincing performance. But I know something you don't think I know. I don't know what you're talking about. The evidence you have on Carter's father. The embezzlement files." Marcus's eyes glittered with malice. "You think you're the only one with hackers and investigators? I've been monitoring both of your communications for months. I know about your little insurance policy." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "What do you want, Justice?" Word dripped with sarcasm. "Carter destroyed my life when he fed information to the SEE about my trading activities. Got me arrested, cost me my fortune, my reputation, my family. Seemed only fair that I return the favor." He released her wrist and straightened his tie with mock casualness. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to give me those embezzlement files? All of them. Then you're going to help me destroy the Wellington family completely. Exchange, I'll keep quiet about the fact that this whole marriage is a sham built on blackmail. And if I refuse..." Marcus pulled out his phone and showed her a series of photographs. Emma and Carter in compromising positions that weren't actually compromising, but would look damning out of context. Doctored images showing her accessing his computer, copying files, meeting with unknown men in dark locations. Then I released these, along with a very detailed story about how Blake married Carter Wellington as part of an elaborate con to steal his family's secrets and sell them to the highest bidder. Guess which story the media will find more interesting? Star-crossed lovers or gold-digging criminal? Emma felt the walls closing in around her. Everything she'd built with Carter, the fragile trust they'd developed, the love that had grown despite everything, would be destroyed in an instant. "You have 48 hours, Marcus said, walking toward the exit. "Don't disappoint me, princess. I'd hate to see you end up like your sister." That night, Emma sat in the penthouse living room, staring at Manhattan's lights, and trying to figure out how to save the man she loved from the consequences of her own revenge. Carter found her there at midnight, still in the same position. "Emma, what's wrong?" She looked up at him, this man who'd become her whole world without her realizing it, and felt her heart break. "I need to tell you something." She told him everything, about Marcus, about the threat, about the choice she had to make. Carter listened without interruption, his face growing paler with each revelation. When she finished, silence stretched between them like a chasm. "So that's it then," Carter said finally. "Marcus gets what he wants and my family pays the price either way. There has to be another option. There isn't." Carter moved to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "If you give him the files, my father goes to prison, but those employees get their money back. If you don't, Marcus destroys both of us, and those people still lose everything, while my father continues stealing from them." Emma joined him at the window. "I won't let him hurt you, Emma." Carter turned to face her, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you." The words she'd been longing to hear felt like a goodbye. "I love you too," she whispered, "and you know what you have to do." Emma closed her eyes, feeling tears. She'd held back for months finally fall. "There has to be another way." "There is," Carter said quietly, "but you're not going to like it." He pulled back, and Emma saw something in his expression that terrified her. The look of a man who'd made a decision that would cost him everything. "What are you thinking?" Carter's smile was heartbreaking. "I'm thinking it's time I stopped being a coward." Before Emma could ask what he meant, Carter's phone rang. The caller ID showed Marcus Thompson's name. Carter answered on the first ring. "Marcus, I've been expecting your call." The meeting took place on the rooftop of Carter's building at dawn. Manhattan stretched endlessly below them. The city that had witnessed their collision, their destruction, their unlikely salvation. Emma stood at Carter's side, the embezzlement, files in a briefcase at her feet, while Marcus paced the perimeter like a predator circling prey. "Smart choice," Marcus said, eyeing the briefcase. "Well, I have to admit I'm disappointed. I was hoping for more of a fight." "The fight's over," Carter said quietly. "You win." But Emma heard something in his voice that made her blood run. Cold Carter had that same resigned tone he'd had the night she'd first blackmailed him. The sound of a man who'd accepted his fate. "Carter," she said quietly, "what did you do?" Before he could answer, the rooftop access door opened, and FBI agents poured onto the roof, weapons drawn. Behind them came Detective Sarah Chen, the same detective who'd handled Sarah's case 5 years ago. Marcus spun around, confusion and panic warring across his face. "What the hell is this?" "Marcus Thompson," Detective Chen said, approaching. "With handcuffs ready, you're under arrest for conspiracy, blackmail, and sexual assault." Emma's world tilted. "I don't understand." Carter turned to her, his face etched with pain and love and terrible resolve. "I called them last night, after you told me about Marcus's threats. But the evidence," Emma stammered. "Your father, the embezzlement, it's all real. I know." Carter's voice was steady despite the chaos around them. "I turned him in too." Emma felt like she was drowning. "What?" "While you were deciding how to protect me, I was deciding how to protect you." Carter reached for her hands, holding them tightly as Marcus was read his rights in the background. "I called the FBI and confessed everything. My father's crimes, Marcus's blackmail, the assault from 5 years ago. All of it." "You can't do this," Emma whispered. "Your family, your company, everything you worked for." "Emma, look at me." Carter's green eyes were fierce with purpose. "Do you know what I worked for? I've been building my entire life. Legacy built on blood money stolen from people who trusted us. An empire founded on silence about crimes that destroyed an innocent girl." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "Sarah's gone. Destroying yourself won't bring her back." "No, but it might save someone else's sister, someone else's daughter." Carter glanced toward Marcus, who was being led away in handcuffs, still screaming threats and denials. "The assault charges might not stick after all these years, but the blackmail and conspiracy charges will. He'll finally pay for what he did." Detective Chen approached them, her expression sympathetic but professional. "8, Mrs. Wellington, I need to ask you some questions about the evidence you've been carrying." Emma looked down at the briefcase, then back at Carter. "What happens now?" "Now we tell the truth," Carter said. "All of it, and we face whatever comes together." The investigation that followed consumed 6 months of their lives. Carter's testimony brought down not just his father, but an entire network of corruption that had infected the Wellington business empire for decades. The pension fund money was recovered and returned to the employees who'd been robbed. Carter sold off company assets to ensure full restitution. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Carter's father received 12 years and died of a heart attack 6 months into his sentence. The Wellington empire crumbled, but something else rose from its ashes. Emma found Carter on the fire escape of their new apartment in Brooklyn, watching the sunset paint the Manhattan skyline in shades of gold and crimson. It was smaller than the penthouse, cheaper, more human in scale. It was home. "Any regrets?" she asked, settling beside him on the metal grating. "About losing everything?" Carter considered this. "I didn't lose everything. I lost money, property, a name that was poisoned anyway. But I gained something I never had before." "What's that?" "The ability to look at myself in the mirror." He turned to her, this man who'd sacrificed everything to save her from having to choose between love and justice. "Besides, we're not exactly poor." Emma laughed, thinking of the photography business she'd started with the settlement money from a lawsuit against Marcus. It was small, but growing, specializing in portraits of survivors. Faces that had seen darkness and chosen to keep living. "Do you think she would have forgiven us?" Emma asked. "Sarah." Carter was quiet for a long moment. I think she would have wanted us to forgive ourselves. I don't know how to do that. Neither do one. Carter reached for her hand. But I think we learned together, as if summoned by her. Emma felt Sarah's presence in the evening breeze, in the way the light caught the windows of the buildings across the river, not haunting them anymore, but blessing them, releasing them. I love you, Emma said, the words carrying 5 years of rage and grief and healing. I love you too, Carter replied, and this time it didn't sound like goodbye. It sounded like a beginning. Below them, the city that had witnessed their destruction continued its eternal dance of light and shadow. Home to 8 million stories of love and loss and redemption, there were just 2 more souls who'd found their way back to each other through the darkness. But they were alive. They were free. They were enough. Asterisk, subscribe for more intense romance stories, dark academia tales, and emotionally gripping fiction that will keep you up all night. Comment below. Which character do you relate to, more Emma or Carter? What would you have done in Emma's position? Did you see the final twist coming? The end?